Saudi Arabia's football journey is undergoing a remarkable transformation. The Future Falcons program has already sent over 30 young talents to the European leagues, proving that the kingdom is really serious about becoming a global leader. However, achieving sustained excellence in football is more than just, sending players abroad. It's about creating a holistic and ecosystem where talent, infrastructure, strategy, and community work in harmony. Today, we will likely discuss how Saudi Arabia can turn ambition into legacy, from grassroots program to global level tactics. We have a phenomenal panel to guide us through this conversation. Please welcome Mr. Romeo. He's the charge at SAF, shaping the future of the Saudi football. Mr. John Hell, a global thinker helping Al-Ittifaq. And Mr. Bandar, he's the president of a Riyadh club. Let's dive into what it takes to build not just the future Falcons, but the future of Saudi football itself. I would like to start with Mr. Romeo. Romeo, the Future Falcons program has been a game changer. We've heard about young players signing great contracts in Europe. But with the great talents comes also great expectation. What's the next step to ensure that these young players not only compete, but thrive on a global stage?
Thank you all for having us. First of all, appreciate the level of the audience and people listening to us on such an important event. Just to follow up quickly on Mr. Hamad in the presentation just a little while it finished ago, stated that alongside with the investments of infrastructural level of what Saudi Arabia is doing in order to actually the whole planet watching 10 years before the actual event taking place, alongside with that, there's going to be a football match happening one day in 10 years, the opening match. There's going to be Saudi Arabian national team starting 11 people over there. Yes, everyone's going to be praising the level of the organization. Everyone's going to be looking at the facilities. Everyone's going to be happy about the level of the impact of the football overall, but we will need to perform as a national team. So we have a unique privilege, I see it this way, we have a unique privilege to have 10-year time, which I've never heard anybody having in the history of football, having 10-year time to prepare for this moment that alongside with everything happening on this infrastructural level, we perform and do well. And this is why I see the Future Falcons are taking the important role. When they ask me, many times they ask me, are Future Falcons solution for the football in Saudi Arabia? I say no. The solution for the football in Saudi Arabia are academies, clubs, and competition. But for the performance of the national team on such an important international level, I know Future Falcons are. Because we are living, we are training, we are competing in a real, most competitive world football environment, which is Europe, actually trying to raise the level as it is right now. That's why I think Future Falcons can have such a strong impact in creation a long-term technical strategy of performance of football.
So Romeo, you mentioned that Future Falcons is not the solution, is not the ultimate solution for football in Saudi. And you mentioned the academies. And here I would like to ask Mr. Bandar, how do you see the role of the academies nowadays in the clubs with the younger generation to actually develop the talents and also allow them to compete on a global level?
Well, welcome thank you for having us this event. For academies, after the new strategies from the Ministry of Sports, the new support for clubs, we start to increase the level of the coaching level. Beside that, we trying to solve the most difficulty we face now is the field. As you know, you need if you use the natural field, you cannot train more than 2 teams in one field. So you need, like Riyadh club, we have like 6 categories of youth. So we need minimum 4 natural field to train our youth. But we feel the value of having the academy. Now in our academy we have more than 400 players. We as Riyadh in high public neighborhood, we need almost 700,000 live in area. we start have the result of our academies by asking to join Mahd, Al Hilal, Al Nasr. So we think we're changing the level of field facilities and the quality of training.
So, Mr. Bandar, you are mentioning some of the challenges probably that we have and like we need to develop in order to actually achieve this global level, which is one of them is the infrastructure.
Yes.
And here I would like to, like discuss with you, John, as well. What other challenges you see like nowadays to develop the football at a very young age, especially with the academy and your work in Al-Ittifaq, and what are the opportunities for that?
I think first I'd like to say thanks for having me as well. Probably to follow on from what Romeo was saying there has to be a level of competition. So the main thing for me would probably be each individual player as part of the Falcons or part of the project for the national team over the next 10 years needs a competitive games program where they're exposed to a high level of competition regularly and they're given the tools to develop in order to physically, I suppose my background being a sports scientist probably hinges more on the physical development and profiling of players, that they have the ability to cope with the demands of competing on the world stage, that they're physically able to perform, and that really you're coming into what you need the players to be able to do. So you've got 10 years to establish what success at a World Cup looks like or on the biggest stage looks like. So what do you need the players to be able to do in order to fulfill those roles? So from a physical, technical, tactical point of view, you really need to start that now to make sure that you've got the appropriate provisions in place and that players are ready and equipped come game day in that opening game to perform and win. So really it's a competitive game schedule and the ability to develop a robust crop of athletes that can perform on the world stage.
As a physical scientist, like maybe one of the interesting things about the Future Falcons program is going to they used to be under 18 and now they are under 16. So as a physical scientist, how do you comment on this transformation and how this transformation with the different age group can really impact the player more positively, the young players?
I think at different stages of development, there's different focus. So I think starting, if we take 18 to 16, starting earlier gives us the ability to have a bigger input on, let's say, physical development, for example. So typically players in European academies will have a program that's typically individualized, especially in top categories within the Premier League in England. We'll have a physical program, a technical and tactical program that's focused on them being able to perform sport-specific movements, have injury prevention and reduction strategies, increase their muscle mass, diet and nutrition interventions. So for me, moving from 18s to 16s probably gives you an opportunity for that to happen earlier, which is a good thing. But you've still got to make sure that you're bridging the gap to the other countries and other governing bodies around, because that's kind of already happening across Europe.
For this, I would like to take your point, Romeo, on this. You were part of the people who led the strategy on making a younger generation, like under 16. And we know, as research tells us, under 16, the people who start professionally under 16, the players can actually perform really better in the future in the, really competitive games. I would like to hear from you, the transformation process. How did you decide that? Tell us about the research that you had an interesting insight on.
That's why I said the solution for the football of Saudi Arabia is academies. Future Falcons is just a tip in the iceberg to actually take the best talent and take it into the competitive environment in Europe to take advantage of the momentum, right? The ideal scenario would be to take the U7s to Europe, but the U7s, the potential of making mistake is huge. You don't know. Yes, you can see the talent, feel it, but you're far from actually being correct. So I'm hoping that the groundwork the academies and clubs are going to do, and this is how it should be. We're going to be taking only 25 players, and the rest is staying in Saudi Arabia. Out of these 25, why we chose U16s? When you plan a project of this size, and 6 years ago when we started, it was still a COVID time. We stepped into the country in a shy way because we didn't have as much of the understanding, not even the cooperation. Now we're the SUF entity, really being the strong one, probably one of the key ground football development factors for the performance of the national team, where now we are having the privilege to take the best players with us, which wasn't the case before. Why U16s? You have to know that, first of all, U16s are, as my colleague says, they're optimally young enough, would be better that they're U7s, but they're optimally young enough that you can still make a physical impact, but they're also old enough to be independent from their families. If you take a U13 kid, he's going to be homesick in 2 weeks. So we're having the 25 players that are U16. Now it's a full national team squad that our plan is that next year they stay 1 more year in Europe, becoming U17s. The new U16s come in, and there's going to be 2 years cycle for them to adapt and try to take advantage of the best European possibility to perform and develop. Knowing statistically, as my colleague says, there's always going to be 3 to 6 players on the top level quality in every age group. There's not going to be 20, but there's not going to be 0 either. So we have to be focusing, having the internal competition within one team, that the difference between the strongest and the weakest player is going to be as narrow as possible, that they compete among each other on a training session every single day. Not competing against the club only, but competing against each other. That is a subconscious competition, subconscious internal competition that is going to actually make them push every single day more and more. When they stay 2 years like this, when they compete against the best academies, counting on these 5, 6, 7, 8 players that we already, after a couple of months staying in Europe, have phone calls from serious academies, Sevilla, Juventus, Hajduk, Bayer Leverkusen, people calling us, hey, this is a serious, talented player. We want to have it. We cannot sign him right now. We got to wait for the 18th birthday. But imagine if this generation, 2009, 6 players. Next generation, 6 players. Next generation, 6 players. In 10 years, 60 players that play realistic football in Europe on a top professional competitive level. And that's a serious national team for Saudi Arabia that I'm hoping one day that actually when we line up again in the opening match in 10 years, myself with a bit of a pressure, but with a huge privilege to be a part of that, that actually one day we're going to say, listen, we started 10 years ago, we made it right, we made it organized, analyzed, scientific, approached way, and we're going to be okay. Football is football. You cannot guarantee you're going to win the match. You cannot guarantee nothing, but you can guarantee you have done all in order to perform well. And this is what we're doing and hoping for.
This is really interesting. And you mentioned something around, like homesick. And, like younger players might feel homesick, might feel different culture. Still, under 16 is quite young. They are in a very interesting age, they are kind of between teenager and being really adult. So what are the challenges that these players face in a different country, different language, different weather, different culture? How do they cope with this? What are the challenges that they face, and how do you help them to cope these challenges?
They're U16, but they're young, talented, potential players, right? How many times you probably maybe know, maybe not aware of, in tennis, it's even earlier. At the age of 12, kids with the bags twice the size of them, at the age of 12, traveling all around the planet, waking up at 5 o'clock in the AM, investing, doing, because this is what it takes in order to be a tennis player on that level. There's around 30 people working in Future Falcons, 30 people. I'm 25 years in football. I've never seen a project of this size. I don't even know how much it costs, but it's not a cost, it's an investment. Me as a father, investing in the kid is the best investment you can get. It's going to pay back. As the 2 gentlemen on the presentation just a little while ago, they said we're privileged enough to be a part of the investment for the future. Imagine if you've been asked for the educational part, is university in the United States or England or France responsible for the education? I would say no. Elementary school and high school in Saudi Arabia is responsible for the general education. But top students, they go top colleges. They go top education, and they become the leaders of the nation one day to lead the nation in a proper way. So in this level, we have, as you asked me, we have mental coaches. We have coaches, various fields, nutritionists. We do reports like not an academy in Europe is doing. It's a highly professional, responsible world. What I'm happy about that 6 years ago, as I said, it was a little shaky, not know what these guys are going to do. Now we became a groundstone of the development, and I can guarantee you, it's not that I know, I know in a long-term plan, we're definitely going to be the ones making the nation playing football on a proud, competitive senior level.
That will actually take me to you, Mr. Bandar, because, you know, like the Future Falcons program are doing like a great work, you know, on all levels to make really competitive international top players. How about the academy, the local academies? As Mr. Romeo said, you cannot send everyone, you know, like to Europe to play, to compete, etc. How do we ensure that the local academies are also doing a great job and adapting great strategies, developing infrastructure, and so on to complement the work of the Future Falcons?
Well, I think it's need to cooperate between maybe the program and the clubs by implement their programs in the clubs, so it can, or some clubs, you know, they have, financially they cannot do the program. It's costly for them. So I think the program can support them to implement this program, and all this will guide to have, good result for this, and they can fund this or feed the program with the good players for the future.
And this will take me actually to you, John. Like, how can we balance between exporting players into Europe and also attracting players into Saudi to make like the changing room, the local changing room for the clubs here, really balanced and like with good harmony, and can like the locals can learn from the international stars and vice versa?
I think to echo what Romo touched on, that you need a level of competition across it. So teams in Europe and academies in Europe and the international teams that then recruit those players are better for having their youth talent competing in the most competitive environments. And that happens when you have, as you rightly said, the best players competing against each other, and you have the gap in quality much shorter between the top and bottom. So in order to benefit from that, again, it comes back to the kind of first point that I said, you need a competitive games program for that individual. So for me, the balance is, yeah, you're going to have some players away with the Falcons, but essentially our job at a club like Ettifaq would be to equip our players to best perform essentially in our first team, and by result that player's becoming a more well-rounded, more well-equipped player. They're benefiting from the experiences of competing with international players that are brought in to enhance the league, but they're also then benefiting from a training environment where they're exposed to those things. So when you come to the elite stage at a world level, it's not the first time they've come up against one of the best wingers in the world or one of the best fullbacks in the world, because that's been a daily exposure in training. I suppose the key there is the numbers game of how much do you retain the players at the clubs. So for example, there's players, let's say, competing in the Saudi under-21s at the minute that may be part of Saudi Pro League teams. Their exposure to men's senior football, I feel, will be significantly less at this point than their colleague competing in Europe. So if we look at the numbers between some of the players in top-end Premier League academies, some of those players might have amassed 80, 90 games in the Championship with a handful of appearances in the Premier League and even maybe some Champions League experience, where you've got players that we're trying to develop and retain in Saudi that maybe only have 11, 12, 15 appearances in a Pro League team as a result of their spot being occupied by an international player. So it's coming back to the individual. What is the best route to get that player to develop? And for all players, it's different. Some players a loan spell. Somewhere might be the key to getting them senior football experience and developing them. Others, it might be retaining them in the club and training them alongside a top international talent, which I can't give you one answer other than I feel that judging on the merits of the people who are around that player, the infrastructure of the club, the resources that you probably have to make the best judgment for what's in that player's best interest to develop long term, and I think that's how you get the balance.
And in terms of the challenges that the academies have now locally, what are the challenges that you see, and like what the strategies can actually be to develop them so they can also be, you know, taken care of as the future Falcons?
Well, I think facilities, as kind of previously spoken about, don't breed high performance. So I think over time, as you've seen benefited from the future Falcons, they're taking guys into that camp and having a routine and a structure where their life is dedicated and it's in its purposeful preparation and intent to develop every single day is definitely what we need to adopt within clubs within the kingdom, that there is a focus that this is now a profession, that it is not so much a vocation or an occupation where you can just dial in one day and out the next. Motivation's transient, right? We're all motivated to go to the gym sometimes, we're all motivated to, you know, perhaps stay at home some days, but if we're committed to getting better, then over time we develop. And so I think instilling a culture of progress and development and commitment to development programs is definitely something that we can benefit from, because that happens at a much younger age in Europe. So those European players may be getting a head start on nutrition, physicality, training, professionalism, input from psychology, input from top coaching and technical practice. I think bringing that in and having players commit to that process will only benefit them long term, but the more structure we can have and the more support we can have to develop that culture, then, you know, it's truly limitless when you equip that with facilities and infrastructure where you can provide everything you need for the players. But for me, the culture and the drive to be exceptional, because, you know, let's be honest, if you want to see Saudi Arabia achieve something at a World Cup, then that has to be an exceptional performance for any team. They're going to have an exceptional competition and exceptional performances of individuals and collectively in order to achieve a World Cup, an Asian Championship, a European, whatever team you're at. You have to produce something truly exceptional. So to do exceptional things, you have to be committed for an exceptional period of time, or at least very intensely committed to develop.
I think commitment is like a really key in football, you know, and we saw amazing, inspiring like footballers around us who could trick the age, who could trick their physical body, everything by their commitment. And here, Romeo, I would like to ask you, is there any connection between Future Falcons and the local academies? And like, for example, you have some inspiring stories like Abdel Majid Al Jaber, who now is playing in the first division in Bosnia. And like this example can show the young players in the local academies that they can really like play internationally, compete on a high level, be really like top professional footballers. My question, is there any connection with these local academies? Do you share these inspiring stories with the younger players at the academies as well?
The level of the work that my colleagues are doing on a daily level is enormous. There's reporting on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly, on a yearly level that SAF as a main organization has an access to, also the families, but also the clubs where these players are coming from. So obviously we're sharing the knowledge, we're sharing the level, but to go back to your premises like a little while ago, the mental part, the psychological thing that kicks in on this level is crucial. Saudi Arabia has 30+ million people, and the other day we play against Poland national team, and Poland has 40 million people. Poland is a very serious European football nation, right? Among 10 for many years, but you feel on the field, the Saudis are more talented. You feel it. So yes, they're running, they're tackling, they're positioning, they're okay, they're fine, but Saudi Arabia is a talented nation. So luckily, talent is something what is inherited, what is born, what is given by God, by genetics, and you take it and you have it. So mentally, physically, on the aggressive, competitive point, we have, when I say we, Saudi Arabia, we have a talented nation that we, by choosing the U16s, we bring right at the age when they're in a need to start compete in the organized level. So we're bringing the U16s because U17s, it's not about to play. It's about to try to play to win. Because in 2 years, you're going to have to win. Otherwise, people are going to get in danger. I don't mean physically, but generally as a position. So you have to teach them, taking the Saudi good, talented mentality, physically aggressive, fast, quick, talented, with a vision, with a passion and hunger to compete. You take them and put them in the organized structure of a daily life. That means you're going to actually create the positive working daily environment outside the field that's going to transfer the organizational play on the field. And then one day you become a national team. You're going to remember the days in Europe. I played Juventus. I beat these guys in Italy. I beat Bayer Leverkusen. I beat Sevilla. I beat those guys. So when you see somebody on the other side, imagine the mental boost you're going to have of the self-confidence in order to actually see, listen, I played with these guys in Europe already a long time ago. I'm going to beat them again. And this is how we're growing. Not only the football, the tactical, but mental strength in the players. They're actually going to be strong mentally enough. And you mentioned Abdul Malik. Abdul Malik is playing in Bosnia First Division. Bosnia is not the strongest division in Europe, but it's a serious competitive football European world. And if you survived, and there's men around him, men that want at every tackle, they want to break your leg if you have the ball too much long in your feet. So he survived in the rain, in the mist, in the fog, in all the tackles, and he was already one of the most attractive young players in Europe right now. We, as a Future Falcons, together working, as you said, with the clubs, with the ministry, with SAF, we are trying to facilitate that the players are staying in Europe as long as possible, because the experience they're going to be getting is enormous. One thing I wanted to tell you, and to wrap it up, is the passion of the players that we see. I'm Croatian. One day I'm going to leave. But investment in the Saudi youth is going to stay forever. The investment in the Saudi people is going to stay forever. So other than us Europeans working, we have so many enormously ambitious and knowledgeable people working together with us in SAF. Our general director, Mr. Felenban, same energy we're sharing. Imagine me pushing one direction, other people pushing different directions. We're all pushing in the same direction. We have 2 coaches that are professionally from Saudi Arabia working in Europe as coaches. We have assistant coaches, physios, mental coaches that people don't know of. It's an investment in the future. One day when we go, they're going to stay and they're going to take over and lead it closer to the World Cup. So when people are looking at this as a project, it's an investment, and one day 100% is going to pay back. And then one day we're going to say, listen, these guys 10 years ago, they were thinking about a long-term project and they did it. And that's one thing I'm going to have to be proud of, and I'm actually happily having the successes of the performance.
I would like to challenge you here one thing. You know, like, so many great players haven't had like a privileged background. They came from street, they played the game in the street, and this was their environment. And being in the street as a footballer does sharpen your knife somehow with your skills. You know, like how to take the ball, how to fight with the boys on the ground, etc. We see Future Falcons, a great ecosystem where like the nutrition, the mental coaches, etc. How do you actually like balance to recreate the raw environment of football? What makes footballers really top footballers, you know, with like super organized and structural organization? Even
if you speak, and your question is amazing, but the answer is even simple. The football game is a game of 90 minutes, plus minus, right? So, and every player has a ball in their feet between 2 and 3 minutes. That means you have to work the game for 87 minutes without the ball. That means you have to be organized. So your talent, you can use your talent for 3 minutes only. 87 minutes, you got to work the game. So we're teaching them using the talent, as you said, Brazilian nation, amazing talent. But even the most talented players, they have to respect some football rules on the field. That means you cover the player, you go there, you step it here, you back it up. There are some rules. No matter how the talent you have to respect. Even if you're the best driver on the planet, you have to stop on the red light. You just can't get through. No matter how talented you are as a driver. So there are rules. We're taking the talent from the street. That's why we didn't take the players earlier. We leave them develop into the Saudi talented environment. I just said talented environment, taking the best talent, putting them into the organized development structure so they can perform into the organized level. There's a rule, or there's actually opinion, even a proof, that a team, the way they perform between the 60th and the 80th minute in the match, this is the team you have against. Then meaning, if you see the team being spread out, no, they fall apart. The team has to stay mentally focused, to be close, to be organized, to be there, shapened up throughout the whole game. Because the goal counts the same in the first minute, in the 90th minute. We had to teach them to work the game with their talent they have. And I think so far, the other game we play against South Korea, it doesn't matter, we beat them 3-0. But then again, after 3 months of the kids staying in Europe, and in the beginning, let's be honest with you, not all the players wanted to go because there was a lot of question marks. Now everybody wants to come because they see the value of the performance every week against the strong academies, and kids don't understand the word friendly. It's a friendly, but they don't understand the word. They go to red cards, yellow cards, final road. So the progress we're making with them, getting closer to the age of 18, when they're going to follow the career of the Malik, being even stronger because they're more talented at the end of the day, hoping to get the players sent to Europe, signing the contracts and the contribution they're going to get over there, they're going to bring to the performance of the national team and hopefully satisfy the needs and demands of the nation.
On this, John, I would like to get your thoughts from a physical perspective. Do you think having a consciously structured organization can be better than, just playing random in the street, which somehow really nurture your talent, but also you might be more exposed to injury or etc. I would like to, from your point of view, how can we balance between keeping the talent, the raw experience of football, at the same time benefiting from a structured organization?
I think there's probably two sides to that. From the physical point of view, again, it comes back to a need. So if you look at tournament football, you need to be able to compete. You need to be able to compete at a world-class level every 3 days. And you need to be able to train and have X amount of recovery sessions. Within that, that's what tournament football is. So if you go from the first game to the final, you've got however many games happening every 3 days at a top international level. So street football is going to develop skill and technical ability, but it's typically placed in small areas where attributes such as sprinting, the physical ability to cover distance and get around the pitch might not be trained in those environments. So you need let's say a hybrid structure where players are exposed to all the different facets of the game, from 11v11 down to their ability to tolerate 1v1 situations and perform and exploit those. So you definitely need a balance, but from a physical point of view, there's definitely a blueprint between start of game one and the 90th minute of a final, and players need to be able to tolerate those demands. So you need to create within your structured environment opportunities for players to experience those demands from a physical point of view, but then that ties into technical and tactical abilities as well. If players don't have the skills to be able to fulfill those needs, they're not going to succeed at a top level. So yeah, by all means, have the benefit of your technically gifted players that have sharpened their knives, as you put it, on the street and develop those, skills where they can compete and dominate in 1v1 situations, but they're also disciplined, technically, tactically enough to carry out a game plan in an 11v11 environment for 90 minutes, potentially every 3 days at the highest level. So you definitely need a high...
kind of simulating the environment.
Yeah, you have to, because if you put somebody, I'm sure we all train and keep fit in here. If they open the doors and said everybody's got to go and run out a marathon, some of us might get through it, some of us won't. No, I wouldn't right now, because I'm not conditioned for that. So unless you provide people with the opportunities to physically experience what those extreme demands of tournament football are, then asking them to perform and compete and win and excel in those conditions is really difficult. So you need the organisation and the structure to provide those opportunities for people to experience that really elite, extreme demand of what success at a tournament will be, but still have the knowledge and the comfort that they've developed their technical specialities, in more confined or unique environments.
Amazing. Mr. Bandar, as the club president, you look into different strategies. If we could implement the most priority strategy, whether it's focused on talent, on infrastructure, on coaching, on partnerships, to guarantee the Saudi football place among the top footballing nation, what would it be and why?
Well, you cannot split it. I think it's all together. You have to work on infrastructure, coaching programs, and to have a good result. It's all come together. If we work on this, I think we're going to have a good result for the national team. And I think...
Future Falcons.
Yeah, Future Falcons. And we start to feel the result of this. Now we have the example of the program. So when they start the program, now the output of this program is now we see it with the Jabirin performance. Everyone is seeing his performance, quality of playing, mental-wise, how he's working as a professional player, and this is what we need now.
Like, do you share these stories of these inspiring future Falcons to the academy players at Riyadh Club?
Yes, you know, we the team they visit some of our matches, and sometimes they ask for players to join the to check. And sometimes we call them to visit us to check some players whom we think they are talent players. So there is a communication between us and them.
One interesting information for maybe everybody to be aware of, as a message to the audience, to the country. One of the most biggest names in Saudi Arabia is Ronaldo, if not the biggest, right?
Yes.
Is there anybody in a room that remembers any of his games when he was U16 player that he played, when he performed? I don't think so. Other than the mother, father, and the friends. Messi. Somebody name any U16 game when Messi was playing that you remember, Messi. Nobody. Mm-hmm. That means those games at the U16 level now, if we are falling for the bonuses, winning the tournament, winning the league, getting the something, coach getting something, people forget about it. People will not forget a Saudi A national team player that scores a goal in 10 years in the World Cup. They will never forget him. Mm-hmm. They will forget the U16. So let's be smart. Let's allow academies, the more player you let go to Future Falcons, the more successful academy director you will be. Not because you win U16. Nobody's going to know about it. One day, sooner or later, other than you yourself, and a couple of bonuses, rewards you got. On the long run, you producing somebody that contributed a lot. So now, luckily, we have communication with the clubs more and more. They understand the communication. They see the value of even the business value, because it's their player coming to us. One day he's going to grow, become better. And one day, there's a club, they're going to say, he's coming from a Riyadh club. He is the player from that club. Making the club better and better, not only the coach winning the U16. That's why the communication that we have through the SAF now is getting stronger and better, allowing the best talent of Saudi Arabia to come, to compete, to fight, and develop at the level of the national team.
I think there is no better way to end our panel by highlighting the importance of this investment. And I think the word I have been hearing during these 2 amazing days is a privilege. We are privileged to be part of something growing and huge and very, very, very inspiring. We're seeing like so many examples in the Future Falcons, you know, paving their way into the international players. We're seeing as well a lot of Saudi players inspired by their colleagues in the changing room, whether on the first teams or even in the academies. Yes. And I think, as you all said, like, you know, all these strategies, whether it focuses on infrastructure, coaching, partnerships, all of them work together in a holistic way to guarantee a better place for Saudi football. I would like to thank my respectful panelists. Thank you very much for today and for the information that you shared. Thank you very much for our audience. I hope you enjoyed this and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.